Mi quero ajudar para puxar bom mês para adiante. Para não preocupar com vir exitoso lo antes possível, senão para focus arriba vir melhor tiki cada dia. E éxito lo vem desse mês. Self-making tem mentalidade onde o hábito reconhecer que o processo de crescer e vai adiante nunca acaba. Arriba self-making, todo tipo de gente também e contra a história. História não que ajuda a abo vir uma melhor versão de bom mês. Para sobre toda gente tem uma história para contar. Toda gente por si nos algo. E toda gente é self-making.
Self-makers, what's up? Welcome back on another self-making episode. You probably noticed by now that I'm speaking in English. That's because we have an international guest this episode and this week that we weren't expected to be recording with him today, but we made it happen. If you've been following the show for a few months now, probably over more than 6 months, you know that we recorded an episode with this person. We tried to make it happen with a TV screen on set. The Wi-Fi wasn't the best, so he might have looked a bit more pixelated, and the audio quality fell out a few times. So that's why we have him here today. We want to make the content more fresh, more short, and try to not repeat most of the things that we already spoke about while also bringing forward new information. So although he deserves a very large introduction, you already heard that last time, and I think he should introduce himself this time. Here we have Nicholas Hutchison.
I'm very excited to be here. So introducing myself, my name is Nicholas Hutchison. I'm from the Boston, Massachusetts, USA area originally, and I'm the founder of BookThinkers. And so BookThinkers is a community of nonfiction book lovers. We have over 100,000 people in our community, and on a daily basis, I'm just reviewing my favorite books, and I'm just sharing insights with the world. I think these books have the power to change all of us. And I'm really excited to be here. And finally, we've been talking for so long, and we filmed the other episode, so it's good to be here.
Normally, we both attended, or we used to attend a book club hosted by a friend of ours. She moved back to the Netherlands, so the book club isn't really going on right now. But you have quite a few fans at that book club, bro, just saying.
That's where we started.
Kick it back up.
That's where we started reading books, and then because of him, I got introduced to you, and then boom, a whole new world opened. So he's excited to have you here, man.
Well, you know what's funny is I was not always a reader, and I'm not sure if we talked about this last time, but I'm 27 years old right now as we're recording this, and I didn't start reading books until I was 20 or 21. So it's only been the last 6 or 7 years now. And these books really do have the power to change your life, no matter how old you are. If you pick one of them up, just be open to it. And I would highly encourage, everybody to check out some of the books that I'm sure we'll talk about today.
Definitely.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to cover, since you touched on this topic right now, is that besides this show, we also have more initiatives and projects to stimulate reading of self-improvement books here on Aruba. Mm-hmm. One of the projects that I'm trying to follow through on is when you go to high school here, in a period of over 2 years, you're supposed to read, I think, 21 books, if I'm not mistaken. Your last 2 years in high school, you're supposed to read, as part of your exams, 21 books.
Yeah.
When I went to high school, out of the 21, I finished 1. I was just able to finish 1 because I really didn't like reading. It just felt like the biggest accomplishment in that moment. I finished the book from cover to cover, although I really didn't enjoy it. But looking back now, knowing you and knowing everything that I know now, I think it would have been way more beneficial if in my high school years I started reading these books. Or even better, if they're the books that you have to read for school instead of just literature, books, or novels, in general. So
yeah, I feel the same way. I was actually at an event recently. One of my mentors, his name is Greg Reed. He kind of opened up his house for this event. And somebody in the audience told a story that Greg had told in the past, and it basically went like this. They had asked Greg, hey, do you pay your kids, or do you pay your son, because he just has one son, to do chores around the house that he doesn't like to do? Greg's like, yeah, of course I do. That's how he gets his allowance. And he said, you know what you're teaching him, right? You're teaching him to work a job that he hates in order to earn money. And so I think the same thing happens in the public school system. You're taught to dislike reading because you're forced to read books that you don't really like. You don't really learn anything that's applicable to your day-to-day life. And therefore, as a result, you come out of school and you hate reading. And the thought of picking up a book is so disinteresting to you. You could be doing so many other more stimulating dopamine releasing activities. You could be hanging out at the beach if you live in Aruba, or doing some cool excursion. You could be playing video games. You could be doing anything, just hanging out with your friends. Those are all more exciting than reading a book when you're taught that reading a book is boring and that you can't apply anything to your real life. So I totally feel the same way that you do.
When I started like reading books, at first I was struggling a little bit. You said dopamine. Books gave me like some sort of fantasy dopamine imagination, you could say. And then after a while, I was just reading to reading. I wasn't really reading and applying. And after that, I started noticing, okay, you have to start read and apply, be like a guinea pig.
Yeah.
Do you have any like tips or information on how did you ever experience something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. What I try to do now is read with intention. So every single time I pick up a book, I'm trying to think about how I can apply it before I even start reading it. What am I looking for? What am I trying to mine out of this book that I can apply directly to my life? And that keeps things a little bit spicier. So if I fall into a reading slump and I'm just reading for reading, there are really two different directions that I'll go. Either one, what were the goals that I set for this year, and where am I falling behind? Okay, if I'm falling behind on this specific goal, what books can help restart that momentum? I was excited for a reason, so if I can reignite that excitement by reading a book, then I'm sure to stick with it. And number two, who do I admire that I don't really know enough about? So we talked about Walter Isaacson and Steve Jobs before we started this. A lot of people look up to Steve Jobs as sort of an icon of innovation, right? He married sort of technology with art, and it was beautiful, and there's so much to learn about this guy, but most people don't know the first thing about him. And so when you read a book like Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson, you can get really engaged. You start teaching your friends and family about somebody like Steve Jobs, who's a household name, and that's exciting. And they also sort of read like a movie. They read like fiction. And so you can apply things from them, but they're very fast. The reading momentum is very fast. So those are sort of the two directions I go in if I feel like I'm slipping. And then the very last part of your question. So there's a book called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And inside of that book, he talks about creating an accountability group and about measuring your activity in a spreadsheet. And so I still keep one of those spreadsheets today, and I still have an accountability group that I meet with every week today. And so if I learn something from a book, I put it in that spreadsheet, I set a goal to implement it a certain number of times that week, and that keeps me engaged, right? Like they'll push me if I start to slow down a little bit. That helps too.
Yeah.
And you still do that every single week?
Yes.
Or, I mean, you try at least, or are you
No,
consistent
every
with it?
single week, unless I'm traveling but there's 3 guys in the group right now, and we meet every single week.
The
That's
Mastermind Group.
Yeah, Mastermind Group.
Remember you told me about that a few days back, about the Mastermind Group from Think and Grow Rich. And then we've been applying it too, right? We've been like making a group. I've been also doing that with a few friends of mine, and you do see results. But you got to start getting it going. If you don't, you'll just be there. You'll be stuck.
Yeah, it's very true. I remember the other night when we were out, I told you that line. Like, it's a George Bernard Shaw line, but it reminds me of Think and Grow Rich. And it's like, if I have an apple and you have an apple, and we trade apples, we each still have 1 apple.
Yeah.
But if I have an idea and you have an idea and we trade ideas, now we each have 2 ideas. And so when you've got people in the same room and they're walking in the same direction and applying all of their energy in the same direction, magical things happen. And in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill calls it the third mind. He says 1 + 1 can equal 3.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happens is the third mind gets created. So yeah, it's pretty cool that you guys are doing that. And that's also how BookThinkers originally started. I was with one of my friends, Alec, and we were just whiteboarding every single week, like what are some problems that we're dealing with? And people were asking me repetitive questions about the books I was reading. I was like, I need to share this in one centralized place. And so that's kind of how the business started.
So before you started BookThinkers, were you like an avid reader before that, or did it start because of the page?
No. Well, it started at the same time.
Okay.
I mean, I started reading just a couple months before I started BookThinkers. And I started reading because I was very distanced in my college classroom. And I had taken an internship at a software company. And one of my early sales mentors, he introduced me to the world of podcasting. And so I got really hooked on podcasting. I had about a 45-minute commute each way to this internship driving. And so I started listening to podcasts. And every single one of these podcasts, the guests were always talking about their favorite books. And I'm like, what am I missing? You know, I'm not reading any books. The idea of reading books is so unattractive to me, but all of these people, they love it. They really love it. They bleed books. So what am I missing? So I decided to read some books, and yeah, the rest is history. BookThinkers started just, you know, a few weeks or a few months after that.
So just a quick question back on what I asked you. Do you see only benefits if I tell you that I think it would be a good idea for 18-year-olds to start reading self-development books at school? Do you see like some negative impacts coming from that as well?
I don't see any negative impacts. I'm a big advocate of that. And I wish, like I really wish, that those books were introduced to me at that age. You know, people often ask me like, hey, if you were 17 or 18 years old or even 15 or 16, what books do you wish you had read? And I mean, there are so many things that aren't taught in school. One example is financial literacy, right?
Yeah.
We're all forced to play the game of money. The game of money. Money is not evil, right? It helps us meet every tier of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need money for food and water and shelter. And we're all just shoved out into the world after school. We have to go fend for ourselves. But if we learned about money and how it worked from a younger age, I think we would all be better off. You know, by the time we're in our mid-20s or 30s, we wouldn't be full of debt and confused about what we want to do in life. We'd have more direction because we would have figured it out when we were younger and more malleable. So I'm a big advocate of what you're saying.
Awesome.
I
I'm
think
going to
it's
use
funny.
this clip to promote that thing that I'm trying to push, man.
Please do. You have my blessing.
Go ahead.
Teaser. I think it's funny that he mentioned about when you started at 18 years old or so. Basically, this year, someone told me, or a few people told me when I started reading books, that you're wasting your time. That I'm not a big reader, but I've read some books that has helped me make my life easier and meet new people. For example, you guys. And why do you think people say that reading books might be a waste of your time?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think it could probably come from a lot of reasons, but I think what happens is people project their own insecurities on you. And so they'll say, oh, you don't need to read books. Look at me. I came out fine. I didn't read any of these books. It's a waste of time. You know, or people just have different value sets or core values. I mean, for me, I really realized that I love helping other people by sharing what I'm learning from these books. Even if I wasn't applying anything from the books myself, I still get fulfillment from helping other people. And, you know, I also think the people that are saying that probably haven't applied something from a book that changed their life, but they could, you know, I would encourage them to start. Yeah. And so for me, it happened very fast. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. It was the first book that I read, and things dramatically changed for me. And so if I had read another book, would I be saying that to people? Listen, I tried reading them. They didn't really help me that much. I'm not a big fan of reading. Maybe, you know, but as things happened, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, changed my life.
At this point, Nick, about how many books have you read so far?
I'm about 400.
Plus.
400 plus.
That's
And
crazy.
These 400 are all nonfiction books, right?
Yeah, I would say 95% of them. I also like reading business fables, which are fiction, but they teach sort of real life lessons.
Yeah, like The
And
Go-Giver, for
like
example.
The
right?
Go-Giver, which is one of my favorite books. And then spiritual fiction as well, books like The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari or Siddhartha. I really
Nice.
find a lot of value in spiritual fables as well, spiritual fiction.
So, just for my own curiosity, when you keep reading these books, what made it so that you didn't stop at a point and say or think like, okay, I think I know enough, you know, from these type of books, or I think I learned enough? Because 400 books in, do you think that it gets repetitive often, or what do you think?
Yes, things are definitely repetitive, but I love refreshing the fundamentals. I think that's very important because if you read something and then you go years without applying it, it can sort of like walk out of your head, just like a language, right? I'm learning Spanish, but if I don't use it for 6 months at a time, I sort of forget what I learned. And so I'm always refreshing the fundamentals, and I'm always learning different perspectives on the same subject. I think that's very important too. But yeah, people ask me all the time, like, do you think that you've read too many books? Do you think that you're just wasting your time? If you've read a dozen of the best books, can't you just go apply those and change your life? And I think that's one perspective, but instead of watching Netflix or instead of playing video games, I'm using that time just to read. And there's no downside to that. Our brains have almost an infinite capacity. It would take 1,000,000 years of reading before your brain is full. And so, yeah, I love the act of reading now. And I love just always looking for that next golden nugget.
Well, what would you say was the difference in your thought process comparing to when you reached like the 100 book checkpoint as opposed to the 400 book checkpoint? Like, what changed?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about this before we started filming. I think going from average, sort of in the 50th percentile, to the 90th percentile can happen pretty fast. You're learning brand new fundamentals and principles that you can apply to your life, and so you're making big leaps when you first start reading. And once you become uncommon, once you're in that 90th percentile, it's a little bit harder to get each percentage point better at whatever your discipline is. And so I think after the first 100 books, I'm just making smaller improvements, but I'm still really excited. There's also sort of a backbone to BookThinkers where by reading these books, I'm helping to support, smaller authors, which I really enjoy as well. And so, I'm refreshing the fundamentals, I'm teaching people around me, I'm helping to support smaller authors, I'm still making progress. Those are all the things that are still happening, and I love it.
Nice, bro.
Yeah.
Something that really stood out from BookThinkers a few weeks back, I shared with Mauro. You had like this pile of books on a shelf. I don't remember what's the name of it, but you basically said something about book sex. So that's when one book from this subject and this fully different other subject, they make a baby. Sometimes we read the same book, but let's say he's reading Go Giver, me too, but I'm reading another book and he's reading another book. And then we combine something else and create a whole different thing, a whole different perspective.
What also happened that was very cool is right before the Halloween party, when he picked me up on the way there, he was talking about The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene. And it was just funny how we both were talking about a single chapter that we read, and he interpreted that chapter a whole nother way that I did, So we both extracted something completely different. It was like we read a totally different book. Mm-hmm. And so it's cool when you get that, or when you have a friend that also reads the same book and you both comment on it, because then you also discover there's a whole new point of view for that same book.
Yeah, and
awesome.
I mean, it even happens just within my own head sometimes. I've reread certain books 5 or 6 times now, and when I read them, they're completely different the second, third, fourth, fifth time. So it can happen within your own head. But that idea of the book sex, two ideas merging together, creating a book baby, it's such a fun way to think about it. And that's why I read multiple books at a time. So I always have a handful of books going, maybe one on audio, one ebook, and 2 or 3 physical books. And so those ideas are always emerging in ways that the authors never could have intended because, my perspective going into a certain chapter has just been influenced by the perspective that I was given from a different book. And nobody could ever anticipate that, but that's where some magic happens. It's fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
You have any other topic that you want to touch? Because I just have a final one to get into. Maybe.
I wanted to know more about your other projects that you're working on.
Yes, so we've got quite a few, but the one that I'm spending the most time on today is my book. So I'm in the process of writing my first book. I have a working title, which I'm not married to, it could change, but it's The Reading Revolution. And the idea of the book is I've read 400 books now, over 400. And there are things that I wish I knew on day one about how to read, how to take effective notes, how to implement what I was reading, how to create external accountability, how to attract other people into my friend group that are reading, right? You're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, so you might as well have powerful people in your group. And I've also implemented hundreds of things, and I would love to tell people a little bit more about what that looks like and what the benefits are. So when somebody says, reading books are a waste of time, I can say, I've implemented over 100 things and dramatically transformed every area of my life. What's somebody going to say? No, you didn't.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. And I wrote a book about it. So I'm in the process of writing that book right now, and I can't wait to help people. I mean, I think that a lot of people are reading these books because it's attractive to read them, to post it on social media, to talk about these books at a high level. But if you read a good personal development book and nothing changes, there's no difference between reading that book and watching Netflix or playing a video game, right? They're only a form of entertainment at that point, not education. Yes. And so I want to remind everybody that reading is sexy, that education is sexy, that you should be doing it.
Sexy.
And the reading revolution. So be on the lookout for that book.
Nice, love it, man.
I think I'm going to pre-order 2 signed copies as soon as it's out, though. So you should be
Good
ready
stuff.
to ship 2 to Aruba.
Yes, I will.
Do you have any idea when you think you're going to release it?
So the book project is much more difficult than I initially anticipated. It's very difficult. I thought after reading 400 books and being able to speak pretty well that I would be able to articulate while writing, and it's very hard. It's a very different process. It's a different part of my brain. Sometimes I'll sit down and I'll write a paragraph and then delete it, and write the paragraph and then delete it, and rewrite it like 10 times, and I get nowhere for an entire couple of hours. I mean, it's very tough. But I've got a goal to have the first version, so the first rough draft, done by January 1st. I'm a little bit behind on that goal, but that's my goal. And then it'll go through a couple revisions. You know, I'll have some professional editors and story editors go through the book and kind of tighten it up. And then I'll work on the cover design and, you know, having people write advanced praise and stuff. So probably late next year. It's a long process.
You see yourself trying Robin Sharma's method of like, I think when you interviewed him, I don't remember the period of time right now, but he said like he disappeared. He just disconnected from everything and just wrote. I don't remember how long though, but would you see yourself trying that out?
Yeah, Robin, what he would do is he would go for a week or two at a time, and he would do that a couple times. Also, Matthew McConaughey in his book Green Lights, he talks about doing the same thing. It's very romantic to me to go to a cabin in the woods or to a cabin in the middle of Montana with nobody for miles around you and just write and write and write. But I feel like I have too much responsibility. Maybe that's an excuse, but I feel like I have too many other responsibilities to disconnect for that long. I would like to do that, though. I mean, that idea is so fantastic in my head. What I've been doing is writing every morning at a coffee shop, so I'm pretty nomadic, as you guys know, and I move around a lot. And right now, there's a coffee shop that's walking distance from the place that I'm living in Florida, and it's nice. I go, I grab a coffee, I kind of just put headphones on, block out the noise, and I just write for 1 to 2 hours every day. And it's been a great routine. I changed my Calendly, which is my calendar booking system, so that I can't take any morning appointments any days of the week. So I just go and I write. And it's pretty freeing. That's my version of what Robin does.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it. I think I'd like to close off with still a few tips from you on what it's like to build your own show and social media page from scratch up until 130K where you are now.
Yeah, so as Mauro mentioned, we've got the 130K on Instagram, and we also have a podcast. So my podcast, BookThinkers, Life-Changing Books, each and every episode we interview a world-class author. And so what I've been able to do in both of those communities is, number one, borrow credibility, which is a subject that we've been talking a lot about. And Evan Carmichael, who was episode number 1 on my podcast, taught me this subject. He said, listen, I love being episode number 1 because I've interacted with a lot of famous people. And so those people might be more likely to say yes if they see that I was one of your guests. And I thought, oh, that's pretty interesting. I'm borrowing Evan's credibility. Then I'm looking at his friends and I'm saying, oh, I would love to interview that person. Let me reach out to them, but also mention that Evan was just on my podcast. I'm borrowing his credibility, right? Like, trust is transitive. If Evan trusts me and you trust Evan, then you should also trust me. And so I've leveraged that, and I kind of like walk down these roads of, Evan. I used Evan to get this person, and then I used that person to get this person, and then I use that person, and like I can do that kind of infinitely. So it's been pretty fun. So borrowing credibility is one thing that I've done to build an audience. A little bit more of a manual technique that I really love on social media is called the $1.80 strategy. It's originally a Gary Vaynerchuk concept, but the idea is that you go out and you leave your 2 cents in the form of a comment on somebody else's post. So search a hashtag that's related to your business. You could search self-development as an example, and you could go on to 10 posts and just comment, leave a genuine comment, leave your 2 cents, and like some of the other comments in the comment section on Instagram as an example. And if you do that on 10 hashtags related to your business, and you leave your 2 cents on the top 9 posts on the Instagram, you get $1.80. And that's kind of how he came up with it. So it takes a little bit of time, but you're giving other people the ability to kind of interact with you back. So for me, I'll search a hashtag. We'll use a Robert Greene book. I'll search hashtag 48 Laws of Power, and I'll just go and I'll comment on other people's posts. Oh, I really enjoyed that law as well. How did you apply it? Or, hey, this picture is fantastic. I really like the lighting. And they'll get a notification that I commented. And then they can go check out my page. I'm not spamming them saying, hey, come check out all my content. I'm just saying, hey, I really like your content too. And I grew the page pretty fast that way. And I attracted sort of my target audience, which was readers, by using those hashtags. So borrowing credibility and the $1.80 strategy are kind of my 2 favorite strategies to use for growing an audience.
And when you follow, sorry, when you followed the $1.80 strategy, it was you doing that work, right? You didn't delegate it to someone else.
Yes, for a long time it was me, and then I also delegated it for a while to somebody else, but it just didn't, I sort of lost touch with it, and we didn't get the same results for whatever reason. There's also another benefit to the $1.80 strategy, which is that if you're searching popular hashtags related to your business, and you're going in and looking at the trending, sort of the top 9 posts, you're seeing what works well. So if you're the content creator, you're getting an idea for what trends and what does really well in those hashtags. So you can sort of steal like an artist, Austin Kleon, and you can replicate that content, make it your own, and do better. And so I found more value in doing it myself. I don't do it on a daily basis anymore, but for a long time I did. I spent like 1 to 2 hours a day in Instagram building that community before I sort of hit the tipping point and it started building itself.
I think that's really cool. You'll be talking about $1.80 strategy for social media, but you could also apply it to your life. Like day to day, you're walking down the street or you're working, just stop by. Hey, I like your, like we talked before, I like your tattoo. And then you build a connection with that person and you exchange numbers and then a whole other world can open.
Book sex, right?
Book
Combining
sex, yeah.
what I just said with another idea that we were talking about, kind of mash them up and boom, here's a new idea. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
nice.
You have any more questions, bro?
One more. I just want to know one thing. Basically, what tip would you give someone, maybe that's 20 years old, right? And they want to start doing something. Or maybe they already know what they want to do. They just don't know how to gather or, take that first step. What would you recommend to that person?
Yeah, I would recommend doing what I did, which is getting on social media, which is totally free, and teaching other people about what you love. For me, I read some of these books. They changed my life. It was very simple. I got on Instagram, and I started sharing what I was reading and how I think other people could apply it to their life. And that was it. And by teaching other people, you also retain and you can implement more. It gets ingrained into your subconscious because you're repetitively talking about it. So there's some personal benefits to doing that. But by building a social community around what you love, you're also introduced to other people that love that, and they'll help you. And so you can kind of move faster through life and get closer to what you want, your sort of ideal lifestyle. As Tim Ferriss talks about in the 4-Hour Workweek, he calls it lifestyle design. And that's exactly what I wanted to do. So that's what I would encourage other people to do. If you're 20 years old and you love cutting hair, or you love traveling, or you love surfing, like whatever it is, just create a social media community around it and start sharing your love of it with other people, and magical things will happen. I never thought that BookThinkers would grow to what it did today. It was simply just like this little passion that I had, and now it's a full-time job.
Wow, nice. Thanks, man.
He's like in awe, bro.
Oh, what?
In awe, in admiration.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I mean. 'Cause we spoke a lot of times, and he, like when I interviewed you, he wasn't like co-hosting yet. So he was just looking forward to whenever it happens again to be part of it, and now you did.
We made it happen.
That's what I told him. I told him that I saw you guys. You were on that screen. Then I found out about you. And I started applying things that you said, like tips about reading. And I wrote something down. I journaled it. I wanted to be on this show. I didn't know how. I just wanted to be sitting there, actually. But now I'm co-hosting with this guy, and I'm sitting next to you. So I literally manifested one part of that, which is really cool,
Yeah,
you just have
hey,
to start
if you put it out there, the universe will conspire to assist you in it. So you just got to put it out there.
Amen to that.
Well, Nick, I really want to thank you for being on the show, man, because you came here on a very short vacation, but still made the time to sit with us, so I appreciate it. And I know that a lot of people that are watching this right now could have wished that they would have been here, but we're recording in hours that we don't normally record in. So my apologies for that, because I know you guys would have loved to meet Nick, but he promised that he's going to be in Aruba maybe in 1 or 2 years' time, so you'll get that chance probably.
Absolutely. Yeah, I look forward to the next episode, and I love this island. It's beautiful. It's my second time in Aruba, and I'll definitely be coming back.
Awesome.
Thank you, bro. Thank you for being on the show once again.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, man.
So, guys, I invite you to tune in back next week. Remember, you can reserve your spot by sending us a WhatsApp message or email if you want to be in the live studio audience. Next episode is going to be in Papimento again. I'm not revealing the next guest right now, but if you just tune in on the page, you'll see what's up. See you next week.
Make it happen.
Ciao.
I forgot that.
What?
Louis Davis said make it happen.
Hashtag make it happen, bro.
Normally it's in Papimento.